this is the second of two talks. If you didn't have the opportunity to go to the talk this time last week, then of course the video is available. So I'll suggest that you go and check out the video where we go over the basics of how to write a thesis document using LaTeX and other software tools like BibTeX. So let me get started and open up the presentation here. Okay, so as I was saying, this is part two, and so it's really, the title is The Technical Details. So we'll get into the technical details of writing a thesis with LaTeX or LaTeX, but really we're going to, most students are writing their thesis documents using LaTeX, so we're going to really emphasize LaTeX in this talk. And most students, as I understand it these days, are writing their thesis. When they do use LaTeX, they use it through the Overleaf interface online. So we're going to be focusing on that subject area. So before I really get into the core of the talk and start just going through all the slides, I want to encourage students to participate. Participation is going to make the presentation more effective and more relevant to the kinds of problems that students are experiencing when writing their thesis. And they could bring up very important aspects of the discussion that I'm sure that many other students will often have the very same question that you would like to have answered. So please type into chat or unmute yourself and ask the question if you do need to have an answer to a question. I will actually open at this time. I'll pull out the chat window so I can see things being typed in if their questions come up. Okay, so the outline of the talk as a whole is to really discuss and just define what is a thesis. Because writing a thesis, you have to have a clear understanding of exactly what you are buying into. So start off with just saying what is a thesis. And then for theses written in my area and in many areas, the fundamental components of a thesis and what questions they answer as it relates to the entire onus or what is the charge of writing a thesis document. So we'll discuss each one of them, and then finally we'll end with a demonstration where we'll go ahead and identify some hypothetical thesis topic, and I'll just start using LaTeX. I'll show you how to open up the thesis document. I'll show you how to start writing. We'll grab some references, and then we'll integrate those references into the LaTeX document and so that they can be cross-referenced, and show you how all of these technical components work together to create this way of writing a thesis. Again, LaTeX is a piece of software that you use for writing your thesis. It's sort of it's not so much a word processor like Microsoft Word or other interfaces where you just type the text in. LaTeX, you're actually typing in essentially how you would like that text to be represented. So it's more like a programming language when you look at how it's written. However, it has a lot of important flexibility options that it provides, and we did talk about a lot of those flexibility options in the first presentation. So, a thesis. What is a thesis? Very important that we all have a common understanding of what is a thesis. It is a statement that clearly identifies that you want to talk about some topic, and you're going to address specific aspects of this topic in your paper or your thesis article. And you write this for a specific audience. So you have an audience in mind, and you have some important statement. Now, statements you might think of as a fact. However, a thesis is usually doing something new. It is part of the requirements that you do something that fundamentally builds on the academic record in some research capacity. So a thesis statement is a sentence that identifies the main idea of whatever you're writing about, and helps control the ideas that you express. So it's basically carving out where you are going to be working. You do not, theses are very rarely simply a fact, because you are writing in the master's or a PhD, you are advancing state of the art. You're advancing research knowledge. The field of academic knowledge is being added to in substantive way by the work described in your thesis. So that means that it's not explicitly a fact, it's something that you are essentially stating, and then you are trying to gather information that relates to it. And so everything in your thesis document relates back to your thesis. And so it could even reflect an opinion or judgment, in which case you collect evidence and you find, and then you do comparative analysis and see what actually falls out. So we will choose a thesis topic today. It might be an interesting one, and then we'll just go ahead and start writing. Any questions about what is a thesis? Okay, part 1, the introduction. Okay, in the introduction, you need to, the introduction is sort of a longer version of the abstract. So I sort of skip over the abstract, which is a very important required part. In fact, the abstract is the thing I typically write last. I usually kind of sketch an abstract out in the beginning of my writing process to have to ground myself in exactly these important components of the complete article, whether it be a thesis or a conference article or a journal article. And then after you've actually finalized the article, you can go back and you may have a different opinion on what exactly your contribution was or what came out of your work after you finished writing than what you had started with. And so the thesis can lead you into new areas. And so in many cases, you need to go back and rewrite your abstract after you've completed your thesis to kind of do a sort of a review of what you thought you were going to do and what you actually ended up doing by the time you finished your document. So for that reason, I kind of just treat the introduction. And I see the introduction as an abstract as kind of similar, except the abstract at the end of it, it's not just introduction, but it also has conclusion. So the abstract is typically a mixture of the introduction and your conclusion, because it's kind of saying where your problem is and what you did with respect to that. So to summarize, when a reader has finished reading the introduction section, what should they know? Well, they should understand what problem you're addressing in your thesis. So you need to provide more details about it. So you have the thesis itself, but what exactly are you attacking as the academic problem of import for your thesis? And often it can be quite technical, or it can be very specific. In either case, you have to provide several sentences, maybe several paragraphs, to exactly state what you are addressing. And you also need to say why people might care about the solution. So what is important about solving this problem? And that needs to be conveyed to the reader so that the reader can understand the impact of the work that you've done. So then you need to establish a contribution. So the last two bullet items here are related to making sure that the work, you're clearly stating your expertise on progress in the area up to the state of the art, and what differentiates the existing progress in this area relative to what you are doing. And so that's stated in two bullets. The first bullet is kind of some paragraph that says what has happened on this topic, and what is it that's what are the unanswered questions here, and why haven't they been answered? And then finally, what are you doing? What is in this thesis as it relates to the problem, and in what way does it advance the academic knowledge in this area? these are the critical components. As this, of course, this is a matter of my opinions here. There's no formula out there for how to write a thesis, but these are so what I feel are really important questions to address in the introduction. Are there any questions about introduction? Okay, I'm going to go on to. So I often see a thesis as a five really important components. The first one being the introduction. The second one is related work. Here you provide a evidence of your expertise of the work that relates to your thesis area, and you do that by listing everything that's been done and that's closely related. So at the end of a related work section, the reader should have a clear answer to all of the questions that we have here with a bullet. So you provide an overview of related research in the topic area. Now this doesn't have to be very specific, but you might provide some kind of categorization. Say that we are doing a thesis on whether a human being can watch paint dry. I don't know. And so what research has been done. Here's a bunch of work that's been sort of an analysis of how long people can look at one object over time, and here's an analysis of how interesting paint is psychologically. I don't know, but you kind of break it into pieces, and then for each of these related areas in the research community, you provide an analysis of what in that research community is closely related to your work, and how that work has evolved from maybe seminal or the first articles. And a lot of times you can kind of cite the seminal work maybe once, and then just kind of jump to the last few years or last decade, depending on when the work actually occurred on this topic area. And your job here is to describe how the work, or when I say work, how research has evolved to the current state of the art in this area. And so finally, I want to point out that in related work sections, we have to be extremely specific as it relates to papers that seem like they might have already solved this problem. So in engineering contexts where I typically do work, you might have work done that seems to be that is on the same topic area but takes a different path to the solution, or maybe only solves the solution for certain restrictions when you don't have this sensor or that sensor. So this requires a very specific treatment of those works that are most closely related to your thesis, and you need here to be very specific about what the contribution of your thesis is beyond what exists in the academic record with other research. And this obviously requires a detailed reading of these articles and a detailed understanding of what they do, and further an understanding of what you're doing differently and why that's important. All right, and so often at the end of the related work, you have these detailed descriptions, and you kind of restate maybe your contribution as it relates to specific related works. Like, this work does this and this, which is important, but I am doing this, which is different from that work, and also important because of these reasons, right? And so that way you can make explicit the way that your thesis is building academic knowledge, and it's sort of building on these specific other papers. Any questions about related work? Okay, so the third of 5 sections, this is the methodology section. The methodology section is a method, or methodologies is how you're going to do this. So you have a thesis statement describes what it is that you're trying to understand, or what question you're investigating, and why it's not been, this question allows you to make some kind of a new academic contribution. The methodology is telling people how you're going to do that investigation. All right, and so academic methodology as it relates to your field of study is something that needs to be brought to bear in this section. At the end of the methodology section, the reader should have a clear answer to the following questions. What theories are being used? So if you're doing something, what theories come to bear on the question that you're asking? And so you start typically with models or works and what those works say. So it's kind of bringing it as the basis from which you will extend your that work. And so you need to often restate that theory. Whether, I mean, in math it's often easy. You can state the theory as an equation, but maybe it's not math, it's something else. You can state what's been what the current practice is for say if it were sort of medicine, and essentially you need to then say, okay, well, what are we doing that's new, and make a statement that says, well, this is the theory and this is what we're doing different. And by making that explicit, you can be very clear about what differences are being introduced. And it also allows you to set up a discussion about analyzing those differences and those extensions in terms of maybe measurements that one might make or analysis that one can do. And so it sets up the experimental approach. Now, experimental approach, often you can put the theory of the approach, i.e. how you're going to approach your experiments, in methodology. Sometimes that gets merged into the results section, which we'll talk about next. And so if you choose to put your experimental approach in your methodology, then you're really telling the reader how your experiment is going to be conducted and the kind of questions that you expect that experiment to be able to answer based on, say, what's the control and what is being allowed to vary and things like that. So standard experimental analysis. And so and I have this sort of catch-all statement at the bottom here. At the end of the methodology, the reader should have either an explicit answer to, or if you're using methods that have already been previously discussed and they're too long to describe in your document, references that tell them where to go to see all of the details for specific aspects of your methodology. Anything related to how gets answered in your methodology section, because methodology says answers questions about the research as to how it was done. Any questions about methodology? All right, very quiet audience out there. I see nothing in chat, so can someone just type something in chat, because I'm not sure that any human beings are. Am I frozen? Are there human beings out there? Okay, hi. Okay, thank you. It's for quite kind of you. When things are so quiet, I start to get worried that maybe, in fact, my internet connection is not working. So thank you for being kind enough to respond. Okay, so that's methodology. And I'm just going through these quickly so that we just can ground ourselves in how we're going to go about attacking this monumental task of writing a thesis, right? So this is we have the introduction, we have the related work, we have methodology. The next section is results, and so will this slideshow be posted anywhere? Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to share it with it's already shared with Aura and the folks at the Center for Graduate Life, and I'm quite happy to share it with anyone that wishes to have it. It's so she can share it with you, or you can just email me and I'll share it with you, and you're welcome to have it. And if there's anything that we'd like to add to it, I'm always looking to improve. So let's see. Results. Okay. The results section provides the data that you recorded using the methods you described in your methodology. And so that's why the methodology is useful, because you no longer have to put sentences about about how you're doing things. So how questions get answered in the methodology. What questions? What is the value of the data? what did I measure? What did I find? What comparisons? You act on. It's an acting on your methodology is all the results are. So in results section, you'll have a lot of phrases and sentences that say, as described in the methodology, we performed this experiment, and this is what we recorded as data, and this is what we found from this data supports the following conclusions, and it sort of leads on to the next section. So in the results, you analyze the data that you collect objectively, and you analyze how that data reflects against your original thesis. And sometimes there have been cases where surprises happen, and you need to go and reevaluate your thesis, or maybe kind of add a caveat, or say that this thesis may not be true. Maybe you need to say, well, it's surprising, and change the thesis to be, well, we found this. And so the thesis itself you state because you want to investigate a topic, but it doesn't necessarily mean that original thesis is correct. This is research. When you do research, you're trying to extend the state of academic knowledge, and the outcome of that extension isn't preordained. It's something that we discover as we do our work. So realize that can happen. It has happened for students that I have advised, and it's not altogether. Sometimes those discoveries can be even more impactful than the original hypothesis itself, and even more important than the things that you find may be more important than what you thought you would originally find, which is wonderful. Okay, so you analyze your data objectively, and the analysis is reflected against a thesis statement. At the end of the results section, the reader should have a clear answer to the following questions. What theories are being used, and how did that contribution, more specifically, how does your contribution change what the academic, the state of academic knowledge? All right, and so if your contribution extends current theory, you provide the theoretical data details in your methodology about how you're changing it, but then you're seeing the impact of that change. How does the data support or maybe refute the models that you laid out in the methodology? And you do comparative analysis. So for example, say you were extending some theory, you could say, well, the theory covers this, but see all of these additional pieces of information are unexplained, or do not contribute to that, or do not fall into the application of this theory. And so then you're actually saying, well, I've added this, and this is useful because now we have, I don't know, a performance improvement in an algorithm, or we have the ability to integrate different kinds of data because there was no model for doing data integration. I don't know. AI, maybe I'm inferring something that couldn't previously be inferred. It's a favorite topic is I have a video of a child, and I want to infer whether the child is exhibiting behaviors consistent with autism. Diagnosis methods are like this, and does the AI method work? Well, let's compare it with formal diagnosis by professionals in the area and see how it does. Those are the kind of things that you want to think of, and of course. So experimental. So going to the next bullet, because I don't want to take more than half an hour to do this. I want to get into thesis writing, and I want that part to be more interactive than this part. I don't want to be scared that there are no people out there. So, what experimental approaches are being used? Well, you might have discussed them in your methodology section, but you have to be explicit. Like if you're running something on a computer, what kind of, if it's performance is part of the analysis, what kind of computer is it? What kind of, if you're doing something with a microscope, what are the specifics of the microscope? All these kinds of things. And if a contribution is to be demonstrated, what are the methods for demonstrating that contribution? Well, you have to, usually there's a control and a variable, and you are allowing the variable to change, and you may be looking at, say, different interpretations of the variable. So this last part actually is an artifact from the previous slide, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. Okay, so in the conclusion, this is our last sort of the 5 basic sections of a thesis, and the conclusion is a holistic summary of what just happened. Like if I sat down and read your thesis in one sitting, it would tell me about all of the important lines of discussion, all of the important related theories. It kind of summarized, boil that down into just a short summary, longer than the abstract, and but it would summarize everything. So I kind of put a sort of punctuation mark at the end of the entire document. It's going to review everything that was demonstrated in the document, like what were the methods, what did those methods yield in terms of results, and how did those results advance the state of academic knowledge? That's sort of the first, what was demonstrated, and I kind of made more details about one way that one might kind of summarize what was demonstrated in the document. There's often a paragraph or two about what questions either arised as a result of the research, or were specific areas where the investigation could not go further, or there were unanswered questions that either were brought up or were already known before you started conducting research, but were not able to be answered by the conduction. Often knowing what you haven't done is as important as knowing exactly what you have done. And it not only does it clearly define to other researchers in the area where they might work, it also helps you be very specific about the like it's like a surgeon's scalpel. You can cut out the exact area where your contribution lies, and by either providing evidence and comparative analysis and saying where it is, but you can also do that by saying what it isn't. So if there are areas that you might prove important for further investigation, you can maybe list them, and then what's as important as listing these areas is actually telling people what you already know about them. In fact, there's been papers I've read where they've said this is future work, and then there was a couple of sentences after it. We have found that people that watching paint dry can last for 30 minutes, but then they if done for 15 years, maybe they have a degenerative eye disease. I don't. Seems like that. There's something there after the statement that you can't do it that tells the reader and the research community as a whole what you do know about that area, and it doesn't. And it's just as important as saying what that area is. So a brief commentary summarizing the knowledge gained towards these avenues of investigation. So you're not going to answer any questions there, but you are going to maybe frame those questions and perhaps a little bit of what we know about that question as it relates to the results that you were able to provide. And then there's often, for the work that we do, we need to be specific about exactly what was accomplished. And what's important here is to say exactly how the state-of-the-art was extended in whatever way, and if the work as done is has any constraints or any caveats. So this work was done with ages 5 to 10. So we feel that for this work, when done with students that are in adolescence, having ages between 5 and 10, this is what we found. That's a caveat. And so it applies to the 8 students or kids that have ages 5 to 10. That's an important context or caveat for those things, and it doesn't apply outside of those things. So your thesis needs to be grounded in where the evidence is. And so, for example, I wrote a paper on fractures of tibial plafond fractures, which are fractures of the leg down towards the ankle. I can't generalize the results that I got for that area of the body to, say, the arm. It's a totally different area. So the research that I do there has to have that, well, when you're working in this particular region of the body, this is what's been found and the analysis that's been done. So all of those things incredibly important. So the references are very important as well, but the references is just a list of all the research in the area that you bring to bear as part of your discussion. So we're going to go over references as part of our discourse today. So let's get on to doing this writing in LaTeX demonstration. So as an initial start, we need to define, so our goal here is to write a hypothetical thesis and start working on it. And so I'll just record myself doing that and give you, hopefully along the way, an idea of how you might do similarly for your very specific thesis problem. So let's decide on a thesis topic. So I'm going to reach out to my colleagues out there in virtual land and ask for someone to be so brave as to volunteer a thesis topic. And if no one provides one, I'll come up with one myself. But I would really like for someone to come up with one. And I don't know, I've been so bold in this world of Zoom because there's a list of everyone here somewhere as to call on someone. Does anyone want me to call on them? I see no one volunteering anything. Am I missing something in chat? No, no volunteers anywhere. Well, okay, so how about a thesis topic in computer science? I don't know. Obesity and okay, so does obesity help in school? I don't know. So that might be our question. Okay, so let's go ahead. Obesity. So thanks. For COVID. Okay. Obesity in children positive reflects outcomes for COVID. Oh, so that's interesting. That's all right. So that's our topic. So thank you very kindly for your suggestion, Carrie. We're going to do obesity in children, and the question is like, does it positively affect their outcome if they contract COVID? And so, negative. So is it negative? Does it? So well, I guess we could just no, that's okay. In fact, the question might be, what is the impact of obesity? Does it relate to the prognosis of somebody that were to contract COVID? Maybe that's the question at hand here. So let's answer that question. Let's don't pretend to answer. That's our goal is to pose that question and start writing a thesis about it. All right. So towards that end, this is a slide from our last lecture. I'm going to follow the directions here. So Google Overleaf templates, search for UNCC, and then click open as template. So I'm going to go through 1 through 4 here. And so how is that going to happen? I go through here. I type Overleaf templates, and then I click on the first link. This is overleaf.com. This is a list of their templates. I go to the templates. I type in UNCC. Then I get this, the first link there. This is the template for thesis documents provided to Overleaf that they then kind of provide to all of the students. And you click open as template. In doing so, I will have created. Now you already have to. I clearly already have an account with Overleaf. If you don't have an account with Overleaf, you need to create one to do all these things. But those steps are exactly the same for you once you have a user account. And so we have this topic area. So I'm just going to go ahead and immediately put that in the topic. So title of the thesis. So. And I'm just going to make it, does obesity in children affect COVID-19 outcomes. Okay, and so test user, it's Andrew Willis. Oh yeah, you can, so, let's see, on the left, someone is very astutely, Tasha, thank you, pointing out that I'm actually operating on a master's thesis. So there's a master's thesis.txt and a PhD thesis.txt. And so if I were doing a master's thesis, maybe doing this would be appropriate. So I can see that my title has been specified here. And if I press recompile, the author will change to Andrew Willis. But let's make it let's not make it a master's thesis. Let's go ahead and do it as a PhD thesis. In which case, as Tasha mentions, I would select PhD thesis on the left bar, and then I'd make the same substitutions. So I'll just grab them from the other document. So here, I guess we should technically maybe have a question mark here, and then paste them in here. And then I'll put Andrew Willis here, and now we're writing a thesis for a doctorate degree. And so I don't know. Maybe this is maybe I don't know. Is this children's health? I don't know. Nursing? I'm gonna say nursing. I think that's a formal major. So I don't. And you have to apologize. I don't know all these areas. I know my area quite well, but yeah, I don't pretend to know others. And so Dr. Person A, this will be your committee. So this is the primary advisor on the committee. So this is Dr. My primary advisor. And so there might be secondary advisors, and so they would be here. Okay, and so anyways, we've got our title page, and you can see that the process by which you go through this is relatively scripted. You have to look at these things here, give you an indication of what to do. Anytime that you make substitutions on the left, you press recompile at the top in the middle here in order to see the current document on the right. Now, let's get to actually writing the document and maybe doing something technically. So I'm actually a big proponent of kind of thinking through your problem before you get to writing in detail, so that you have an idea of what structure to address. So let's see. In the introduction, as we mentioned, you might even think about writing paragraphs about, like, in this paragraph I will introduce the problem, okay? And so the statements that you need to say there are essentially something related to obesity in children, and what that has to do with COVID-19, how they relate, and sort of what the state of research is in that. And so that would be the onus of paragraph 1. Paragraph 2 often says something about typical approaches. Typical approaches to the problem. Okay, and so and I could pull something up. I mean, obesity and COVID severity, it looks like it comes up right away. It's probably a lot of work on this. So this looks like this has been cited 64 times since 2021. Probably incredibly important. It's something distributed by the CDC. And so here we have it. This is the actual article. And so, you would take, information from this article, and you see that it's sort of kind of structured in exactly the same way. The first sentence in this article is about the topic of obesity and COVID-19. It's framing the problem space. And they have lots and lots of technical details in here, as the CDC might be want to do. But that's what this paragraph, any first sentence to a paragraph defines the sort of rules of engagement. So this paragraph has to talk about obesity, COVID-19, and some technical stuff, inflammation and immune and thrombogenic responses and pathogens and all sorts. And so all of this stuff that's in this paragraph relates to these modifiers: chronic inflammation and immune and thrombogenic responses to pathogens, and finally this last thing, impaired lung function from excess weight. Well, those are things that they're saying is related. Those are things that have to be in this paragraph, because a paragraph has a topic sentence, and I've highlighted the topic sentence of this paragraph. So everything in this paragraph has to relate to that topic. And your job, in most cases, when you're writing about that paragraph, is to complete your discussion in this paragraph on that topic. So you don't write a topic sentence that bites off more than it can chew. Typically, you write a topic sentence that you can describe in 7-8 sentences so that it's really a paragraph and not a whole chapter. So it's important to structure your topic sentences. This second thing tells about the data that they use as a sort of a methodology statement. And this is more about methodology, making specific what their analysis approaches are. And then they have models. This is more methodology. And then this is actually summarizing their results, I bet. Among this, we found this and that. And then they come out with these statements. These are the contributions of their research, a kind of a restatement of their contributions. So it follows, like academic research, it generally follows this pattern. And so as a reader of academic research for, I don't know, maybe 25 years, you become adjusted to that pattern, and you kind of know what to expect. So let's see, I want to get back to LaTeX and writing. So I would probably write my own phrasing of the specific questions as it relates to the thesis topic in this introduction problem. But I kind of want to key on this typical approaches to the problem or related work, and show us how to actually integrate a new citation, right? And so let's go ahead and cite this article here. This article from the CDC seems very important. So I'm going to go ahead and try and develop a citation for it. Well, this is the suggested citation for it. But more importantly, I would like to use a piece of software for developing. Look, they have tons of data. Wow, look at that. It's very fascinating. So I want to use a tool to build this up. So I'm going to actually search this, and I'm going to search for its DOI. It's a digital object identifier. And so usually any work will have a digital object identifier. This one seems a little bit exceptional, but if I click on it in some journal, hopefully it will have a DOI. So I search in the actual article for this phrase DOI, and I have this. All right, so I'm going to want to use that as a way of indexing this article and actually not having to type in all of this information, because I have a piece of software that will use this index and pull all of that information automatically. So I'm going to highlight it and copy it. Now at this point, I'm going to transition away from sharing just my my web browser screen and share another screen to show you how to use a citation reference management software, which I refer to as BibTech. So bear with me for 1 second while I transition. Okay, so I'm hoping that everyone can see JabRef. Is that the case? No, no one, doesn't seem like anyone can see JabRef. It seems like it's not being the focus here. You can see JabRef? So you can see my list of articles here. Oh, wonderful. Okay, so this is JabRef, and if I were to start a new reference sort of database for this hypothetical thesis, I'd create a new file here. and let's go ahead and do that. So new library. Okay, so this is untitled, and then I'm going to add to it. So one of these buttons up here will allow me to add a new entry. This button right here, and it comes up, and see this DOI. There's lots of different ways to reference it, but I already have the DOI, so there are other ways of getting citations imported. But I'm going to paste the very thing that I copied out, and I'm going to ask it to generate a reference. And so hopefully, can't see the pop-up. Okay, well, I just loaded this. So do you see the result of that in the JabRef window? Okay, so yeah, so when I clicked on this button, a pop-up came, and because I was worried about exactly this, I'll show you what happened. In the pop-up, I was presented with this window. This window that's sort of small here, but so this DOI window. Does everyone see this DOI window? This area here. So I pasted it, so this window came up, and I selected DOI as the type of reference I want, and I just pasted in the information from the digital object identifier, and then I hit generate. And so that is a very quick way of generating what is actually a substantive amount of information. Does everyone see that? Anyways, so finally, I have all of this information here, and you can see that in the actual it actually imports a tremendous amount of data. So what's just as useful is that you can read this article and you can find other things that this article references which are probably also related to your topic. So you can go here, and then at the end of this, I'm sure they're going to refer to other things, and so I have to move some things out of the way because I have lots of windows here. Not sharing the presentation. Oh, I need to switch back. Well, needless to say, there was a pop-up. I just put the DOI into the pop-up where it asked for DOI, and it downloaded all the information. So rather than kind of belabor the point of how to paste the DOI in, I'll share the link for this for sure. Yeah. And I'll do it right now. So this software that I'm using is JabRef. It's free software, so if you type it into Google, you can get it. You can click on download, and you can download it for Mac OS X, Windows, or Linux. I happen to be on Linux, so it's already found my operating system, and it allows me to download it. So, and this will be part of the record on the video, so I'll also share. So you can certainly have that, and that's the data that I'm using. Of course, you can add to this really quickly. So I'm going to save it first. So what am I going to name it? I don't know. I'm going to name it bibliography DB, something like that. I don't know. It's not very inventive, but maybe that's okay. Oh, and normally you want to give it a .bib ending name. So I'm going to save library as, and then bibliography db.bib. Okay, so now it's a .bib file. That means it's a bibtec file. So let's find some other references. So here, look, let's see at the bottom of this article. So I'm going to stop this share, and I'm going to go back to my article, and maybe I'll just share the entire desktop. You guys can see the entire process. So this is show you everything and allow me to switch back and forth. Now, as you can see, I've gone to the bottom of the CDC article. So the CDC article starts here, and if you go to the bottom, of course, they're going to cite lots of important work. So they all, strangely enough, have DOI identifiers. So I can just take this DOI, say I want to include this because I also think this is important. I click on the pop-up, I paste this in, I say generate. It did not find this DOI. I must have a space in the beginning there. Maybe that's the problem. Looks like there was a connection error. Maybe I have external icon. You have to make sure you don't paste in a bunch of extra stuff. Yeah, so I pasted in too much, but I had to kind of clip out some useless text. And now I have two, and so now I have two of these citations. So I mean, we can just quickly build up quite a bit of citations here. So I'll grab two more and just show you how quickly one can compile a bibliography. So I'm pasting in extra text, external icon, get rid of that. Now I have a third citation, and I don't know, let's say this paper here is super important. So I'm going to grab that and add that to my bibliography. And so it looks like somehow I was able to not have the external citation in there. So anyways, now I've got 4 articles, tons of data here, as you can see, are in these different citations. Now I'm going to save that to my bibliography_db.bib, save. All right, and that's a file on my computer. Now I want to integrate that with my brief introduction to related work that I might have in the introduction component. So I started typical approaches to the problem include important work by the CDC as represented by the articles. And now I want to add a citation, this list of citations. So I have to get my file from my computer uploaded to Overleaf. Okay, so there's a mechanism to do that. There's a button up here in the top left, upload, and now I need to drag my bibliography from wherever it is on my computer, which let's see, where is it on my computer? It's probably home, and then where it should be, so bibliography_db.bib. I'll drag it over here. It's been uploaded. There it is right there. And now I have to add it to my PhD thesis. So I go down to the PhD thesis, and we have to add this. So the bibliography uses references_db. And so I could just substitute, but how do I add multiple? So LaTeX multiple bib files. Okay, so we want to have multiple bib files, and it turns out that you can just have them listed with commas, right? And so I already have a bibliography file there. All right, the correct way to load multiple bib files is to put file 1, then comma, then file 2. Okay, I will just follow the directions, and so I will put a comma, and then I will put the name of file 2. What is the name of file 2? It is bibliography_db. Now I've added the 4 or 5 references that I just saved. Now they're available for me to cite. That means I can go back up to the top of my document, go to where I wanted to cite them, which was right here, and now I can put in /cite, because this is how we make citations. Now when we do the citations, we actually have to look at what is inside our bibliography entries. So we have to cross-index them by a key. All right, and so the bibtech key is here. So if I want to cite that this work by Companyettes, well then I have to type in KOMPAN, and so it will help me complete the citation. So cite K, and then there, okay. So as soon as I type in K, it pulls up all possible completions with a capital K. So now I can just go down and select this and say, hey, all right, now I've cited that. So now I can recompile the document. I can go over to that particular part of the document, and I'll see that I have a citation number 1, because it occurred before. There's already another cite down here, and it renumbered all the citations and put them in the references in the right order. And if I go down to the related work, you'll see the reference is added right here, and it's a whopper. There's a lot of information, a lot of people on this article, so forth and so on. And if I just wanted to add a bunch of different citations, here's the other one, and here's another one. And so now if I recompile, I cited 3 works. Those 3 works were automatically added here in the proper format. and they also appear as a comma delimited list after that particular sentence in the article. Right here, 1, 2, 3. So, all right, we're at 12:59. We're only scheduled to go till 1 o'clock. I hope this gives you, I mean, we didn't get very far in terms of writing a thesis, but I hope this gives you critical tools in terms of how to generate citations, how to go about writing, and what actually might want to be the parts of the various components of your thesis. So I'm sorry we don't have more time to go into the details. I always advocate for this method of solving problems by going in and simply Googling things whenever you run across things that are challenging. So with that, I'm going to end the discussion. I'll open it up for brief questions because we're just right at 1, so I apologize for going a bit over. Is there any questions that anyone has? Sharing the link in the chat box. Do I have a link in the chat box? I need to read at the same time print the same number of lines, footnotes from each file in different quadrants facing. Wow, that's a very specific question, Samson. Let me try and get to you in a minute. So someone asked, can you mind sharing the link in the chat box? The link to JabRef or over? I'll share all of the links that so JabRef is one link, and so that's the reference manager that I was using. I'll put that in the chat box. I'll also put the link to Overleaf, so overleaf.com. That's the primary, that in the chat box. And I kind of indicated how you might. I think that maybe will help. Does that help? How? Fantastic. I have a question from Douglas. You bet. And so a question on Douglas, and I'm trying to parse out exactly what is being asked. Print the same number of lines plus from each file in different quadrants. So there are quadrants, so four sections on facing pages. So the Paracol package can really read 2 files at a time, and it prints in columns on a single page. So what? So there are. So Douglas, is this for a thesis, a UNC Charlotte thesis? Oh, it's for a book. I see. So I was gonna warn that wouldn't be compliant with the thesis formatting. So if it's a book that's separate from the thesis document guidelines, then I think we'd have to kind of take that question offline. But we can try and solve it right here. But is there any other questions before I try and solve that? Are there any other questions specific to the thesis? Okay, so let's see. We have 4 files, and you want to print the same number of lines from each file in quadrants on facing pages. Does that mean there are 8 files? So there are 4 files. So there are 4 files. Okay, so it seems like there's several different. So one of these is how the pages are organized, which is something you can configure in LaTeX. The other is sort of like how to do a multi-page document. Oh, I see another. Yeah. Yeah, maybe asking this. So this is pretty technical. There is the Paracol package. There might be another package itself that you could use, and some package that actually breaks down a given LaTeX or a given page into sort of mini boxes or sub pages. Might be the way to go here. But why don't we, because it's a little bit specific to your problem, I preferred maybe to capture that outcome and maybe that discussion over email. So reach out to me over email, Douglas, and I'll see if I can give a hand. It's a little bit outside of the scope for our discussion at the moment. I hope you don't mind. Okay, thanks. All right, well, with that, I will stop the recording, and I will bid everyone a good afternoon, and thank you for coming to this session where we discuss different ways to address writing a thesis and maybe some approaches that you might be able to use in writing your own thesis. I wish you the best of luck, and consistency and just chipping away at these topics one by one will eventually yield success. So I wish you the best in terms of successful thesis writing. Until next time, have a good afternoon.